keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
The Denver Broncos organization is taking a massive step forward in terms of community investment and involvement. Some of their better players are declining the Pro Bowl, which kind of brings up the age-old question that it feels like we've answered about how much Pro Bowls really matter anymore. The Nuggets seem like they're in a little bit of a funk. And Cecil Lammey is going to join us live from Mobile, Alabama in a little bit for an update from the Senior Bowl, as he and Andrew Mason are our boots on the ground covering all things NFL prep for us here at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. But before he joins us, I want to bring in my friend Jake Shapiro, who is an intrepid analyst and reporter at denversports.com. Does so much great work for us on the Buffs, on the Nuggets, the Broncos, really across the board. And I want to start with the Broncos here, Jake, because I want to take an opportunity to tip my cap a little bit to them, just as we reserve the opportunity to be critical if and when necessary and harp on decisions and things like that. The Denver Broncos kind of becoming a trailblazer in a sense of community investment involvement, where they came out yesterday and announced that they are delivering 15,000 or upwards of 15,000 football helmets as a donation to high schools across the entire state of Colorado. So in theory, every boy playing high school football in the state of Colorado was just given a brand new helmet by the Denver Broncos. That's pretty special, isn't it, Jake?
Yeah, when I first read this press release yesterday morning, I was like, "Ooh, this is a cool thing the Broncos are doing. They're gonna put a helmet of every single team in the state in their stadium, because like in Minnesota, the hockey, the Wild have every single high school hockey jersey in the state." I'm like, "Wow, that's a really cool way to honor this state's football." And then I kept reading. I'm like, "What are they doing? Oh my God!" I think this is why sports teams exist, right? Like it's to uplift community. We're really big about that at our company. And it's honestly really inspiring what the Broncos did yesterday and will do for this community with the football initiatives in the coming weeks and months. It really backs home something Andrew Mason wrote earlier today on denversports.com, which is that we lucked out here.
That's exactly where I was going.
Yeah. And, it's one thing to be like, all right, they had the gusto to move off Russell Wilson and they're considering building a new stadium and all this, that, and the other. What's more important than all that is they are not necessarily people that are from Denver or have it going through their blood like some other people. But they've found a way to make themselves really ingrained in the community. And I think that's one of the things I look for from my ownership group. Say what you will about Dick Monfort. He obviously cares about the city of Denver and tries to do things to improve the city of Denver. That's why I've made arguments in the past that Dick's actually a better owner than people give him credit for, because outside of baseball, he's done a lot of good things. Yeah. The Broncos, on the other hand, are doing good things on and off the field and good things that blow you away off the field. So I just tip of the cap, whatever you want to say, but really impressive stuff from the Broncos and something that will not be forgotten by all of the 16 to 18-year-olds who play high school football who may have not had that opportunity before because of their donation.
Oh, absolutely. And as somebody who played high school football, I remember getting the hand-me-down equipment and, worn down jerseys or helmets that are hanging on by a thread, and you've got ripped up pants and, and I didn't, go to school in some obscure, mountain town or something that you could argue has struggles with distinct funding. I went to Chaparral High School in Parker, Colorado, and shout out Wolverines is the only context you'll hear me say that as a Michigan State grad. But I totally agree with you, Jake, because it's not just the single act in and of itself. It's what that act represents. And when the Broncos, who for the time that they were under the trust, just had so much like embroiled drama and controversy woven into their ownership structure post Pat Bowlen, the way that they were able to now, after being bought by the Walton Penner Group, completely reverse and undo all of that stigma and all of that narrative. Because as an ownership group or a fan of an NFL team, your ownership group can kind of basically fall into three categories. One, they're kind of just absentee owners and they're there from a business perspective. Two, they are invested in the football element of being involved with the team and nothing else. And then the third category is kind of the culmination of all three, where you have those things, but they also have a deep-rooted care for the community. And you mentioned these are not ownership members and groups who are necessarily from here, definitely not in total. And yet it wasn't just the community involvement that we saw with this most recent act that they're kind of a trailblazer for. Jake, they took everything that was negative from that player survey that goes around the league, and they made swift and monumental actions to counteract that. They completely redid the training facility to give the players and their families better facilities in terms of entertainment rooms and family rooms with lactation and things in consideration for these guys' kids and their wives and things like that. They expanded the facilities. They made 9-figure upgrades to Empower Field, a stadium that they're probably not committed to keeping, at least not in that location, long term. So you're talking about they're sinking 9-figure investments into something that they already know they're going to get rid of. And an even better microcosm of that is completely renovating the turf and the grass sections of the field with 2 weeks to play in an NFL season where they weren't going to make the playoffs and they knew it. So it just, we are, to echo Andrew Mason's sentiment, we are so lucky that this particular ownership group led by Greg Penner is the team that won the bid to buy the Denver Broncos. And I think the ramifications and the benefits from that are going to expound from years to come.
Just to provide a little bit of analysis on this, because while it is very positive and I want to continue to harp home that point, there's a couple business reasons why this makes sense as well.
Okay.
I just want to put that out there. One, football is not necessarily the highest growth game in the United States, and the NFL knows it and the Broncos know it. That's why they're trying to grow internationally right now. There's not much room left to grow. We also aren't far away from about 5-10 years ago when there were so many issues about concussions, where we were worried about maybe youth football isn't really going to be a thing that the
kids will play baseball, they'll go swim or play tennis or
correct. So these helmets are going to help kids stay safe and potentially have longer careers in football and potentially help kids get into the NFL. And the NFL needs to continue to develop talent. So that's important. Baseball did a great initiative with this a couple years ago and continues to do this. It's called Play Ball. It's helping inner city kids get the funds necessary to get baseball equipment and fields and stuff like that. So this is a really smart business play because you need to continue to grow the game at every level and convince kids that your game is safe and suitable. I'm not one who necessarily believes football is the safest thing, but I understand the ramifications and the measures you can take to make it safer, and it's smart to do those things. Secondarily, we talk about a new stadium, Richie. With most teams who build a new stadium, they rely heavily
taxpayer involvement
on taxpayer and government and local funds.
So we're sweetening the pot here. We're giving you 15,000 helmets because we're going to ask you for a 10-year stadium tax in an upcoming bill.
And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen because I think the Broncos owners have kind of hinted at the fact that they're going to rely on themselves, which good for them. They're the richest ownership group in the NFL. When the time comes, we're far out from that, so it's not even worth having the conversation. But it is worth keeping in mind that they're trying to get in the community's good graces. And maybe it's just for the community's good graces, and we don't have to look past that. And I hope that's what it's for. But it is worth keeping in mind that they might rely, like the Chicago Bears, heavily, $1 billion ask of the city of Chicago to build a new stadium here in the next few years. So that's something to keep in mind with everything that the Broncos ownership group does here. That is it in play of building that new stadium and how they're going to fund it.
Well, to your point, business and charity aren't always mutually exclusive, and charity for business reasons, while some may argue doesn't have some of the same warm and fuzzy as charity for charity's sake, it's still beneficial to those who are in need of said charity. So I am okay if there are secondary benefits or even secondary motives that are involved with this, because the people who are benefiting from it still need it. And they're
look at the Walter Payton Man of the Year thing. Like, some of it's kind of BS with how it's done and where the money's actually going, as we found out with the Russell Wilson stuff.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, there was money going to people who needed it. That. So there is a primary effect that's way more important than all these secondary and tertiary things we're talking about now.
Jake, the other headline that made news recently had to do with the NFL Pro Bowl, and it was that two prominent members of the Denver Broncos on the offensive side of the football in Quinn Meinerz, who was a first alternate, and Bo Nix, who was a fourth alternate, both declined their subsequent invitations to the Pro Bowl now that we know the two final teams who won't be participating and the players from those teams that will need to be replaced. Both guys declined it for what I assume is different reasons. In Bo Nix's case, it was very clearly stated that it was due to a previously scheduled, routine, minor operation. So Sean Payton didn't need to ask for any more adjectives from anybody. The Broncos didn't need any more adjectives on that one. We got previously scheduled, routine, minor, cleanup operation. Maybe cleanup is a fourth one in there. But Quinn Meinerz, there was not that same context given. And I was just curious what your thoughts might be on the declining of the Pro Bowl for those guys, because while I understand that the Pro Bowl is not what it used to be, it's a skills competition now. It's not even a game. It used to be like, full contact and really kind of a point of pride for a lot of players with those designations. It's not that anymore. But is there not still an element of representing your team and your organization on that stage because of the limited amount of people that get invited? And as a rookie, who's never experienced before, and a rookie contract or first contract player like Quinn Meinerz still is just transitioning out of, who's never been, should there be no excitement about that?
Yeah, I don't think anyone cares about the Pro Bowl is part of this. And especially if you're an offensive lineman, what's the upshot? Like, I don't really understand what Quinn Meinerz benefits from this. And I talked to Quinn after the season ended at locker room cleanout. I had a conversation with Quinn. It seemed like he was very excited to get back to his family. And, obviously he wanted the season to continue, but he was essentially like, this has been a season longer than anyone I've had in the NFL. And now it's time to focus on other things that aren't football. So I think Quinn deserves it. He got a giant contract, and he even talked about dealing with some of the struggles that came mentally with adjusting to life on a new contract, which is understandable. There's a lot more pressure that comes to a person like that. So I'm fine with Quinn. That doesn't bother me at all. The Bo Nix thing, Valeri Nichushkin very recently, day to day, got an injury,
week to week.
It's going to be okay. And we're sitting here a month and a half later and he still hasn't played. And we're finding out he's probably not going to play for another month. Anytime a player has an operation, it is a little bit scary.
Previously scheduled, routine, minor, cleanup.
And I wonder what that is. Like, is it taking a piece of a meniscus out that was maybe gone wrong? But Richie, even if you do that, you're potentially harming your mobility down the road.
Yep.
So we have no idea what this is. I don't like the fact that Bo Nix is having to deal with some after effects of the season. He even talked about it. I was in the room when he did this, about the back injury he suffered in Las Vegas, which affected him for a couple games down the stretch. So I'm a little bit worried about it, but ultimately Bo's built like a horse, and the style of football he plays is one that's going to tend to get you injured. So I'm not surprised. And I don't really care that Bo got the surgery a week earlier to miss the Pro Bowl. That probably benefits the Broncos in the long term.
It could. Yeah. And usually
we don't know those surgery procedure.
Yes. And I feel like when you use those words like routine, cleanup, procedure over surgery, I feel like that typically lends toward like a knee scope or something, a cleanup for a bone fragment in the ankle to relieve some swelling, not as serious. And I hope that that's the case for Bo, although I have no intel or insight as to whether that's the case. Jake, before we bring in Cecil Lammey here, give me 60 seconds, an elevator pitch as to why the Nuggets seem like they're in a little bit of a funk right now. They get absolutely bullied by the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then they turn around and lose to a lesser team, a team that's several games under 500 in the Chicago Bulls, with the New York Knicks on deck tonight. What's wrong with them right now?
This is the Denver Nuggets. I'm not surprised at all by this. They played a lot of bad teams in a row. They go to Minnesota with Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup in a game that they really need Aaron Gordon to be starting. He's clearly not healthy yet. They go to Chicago and they just get killed on the 3-point battle. And that's been a problem for them all season long. Not surprisingly, it comes from one of the guys who desperately wants to be traded here in Zach LaVine. trying to prove a point. And now you've got the New York Knicks, who in my mind are probably the fourth best team in the NBA tonight on the road in New York. So yeah, I'm not surprised by any of where the Nuggets are. If you look at the Nuggets' upcoming schedule, they really don't play anyone again until Oklahoma City on March 9th. So they've got a long time here to just stack some wins, kind of find themselves and regroup. The Nuggets are probably going to hide the fact that they're just kind of a mid team right now. That's probably the second or third best team in the West, clearly way behind Oklahoma City when they end up at like 40-20 after this next stretch. But this is who the Denver Nuggets are. They have flaws. They're pretty big flaws. And you saw them over the last two games.
Well, it'll be a big test to try to turn things around against the Knicks tonight in New York. With that, I want to welcome in one half of Dover and Cecil. Cecil Lammey, live from Mobile, Alabama. It looks like we've got Senior Bowl practice going on in the background there that I see behind the shades. Cecil,
yes.
You cover this event and the Shrine Game as closely as anybody in the industry that I have ever come across. You have a special connection to this, and the insight and the intel that you get from this has paid dividends for us as a station and us as a sports community. So I am dying to know what observations you've made thus far, with particular interest on the tight ends and the running backs, two positions that are going to be heavily addressed for the Broncos this offseason.
Right. And I would say here in Mobile, you got to get a couple of ducks. I think a couple of ducks. And it's not just the helmet scouting thing, and it's not just they caught passes from Bo Nix, but two of the best players here. Now, this is the American team practicing behind me, but in the national team, two ducks. Terrence Ferguson, probably a fifth-round pick at tight end, the most consistent tight end out here, huge frame, local Colorado prospect as well. And he's a kid that knows how to use that frame, doesn't get a ton of separation with his speed, but your traditional wide tight end, and that he can be a blocker, he can be a receiver. He's been the most consistent of any of the tight ends. I know Harold Fannin, the Bowling Green tight end, is out here, and he's been doing some really good things. Separation, they're working him a lot as a blocker, getting him reps at fullback, which may or may not be a request from the Broncos, by the way. I'll dig and find out if that's the truth, because teams can request like, hey, we know you did this, but can you try a different position? Can we see you line up somewhere else? So we're seeing that with Harold Fannin. Fannon's kind of the flash. He's the receiver. He's the dangerous guy. He's a little bit wild with his athleticism as well. But it's Terrence Ferguson who's been the most consistent on a day-in, day-out basis. And then the second duck, I got to talk about Bo Nix's adopted brother. I'm going to talk to him here in about an hour. About an hour, they have media day. So I'll be able to talk to Tez Johnson. And you talk about a 156-pound playmaker. Now it's 156. And that's, if you could add 10 pounds, that would be helpful. But all I know is I've taken a call on him 7-11 because he's always open. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the coverage. And I know he's a little guy, but you need playmakers. And I'm talking about a 7th-round dart. So if you start this thing out and you say you take Ashton Genty in the first round at 20, second round you get a Harold Fannin, 5th round you get a Terrence Ferguson, 7th round you get a Tez Johnson, I think that'd be a tremendous start for the Denver Broncos. And you get two guys in Ferguson and Johnson. Johnson, obviously, his adopted brother since he was 15 years old, has been a member of the Knicks family. It's a great story. But beyond that, fellas, he's a great playmaker that's just having 2 days in a row great practices here in Mobile.
I haven't been 156 pounds since like the 6th grade, but I do love 7-11. And it's funny that you mentioned Tez Johnson, because I think that there's a perception out there that Tez Johnson is in reality and could be, if he were to join the Denver Broncos, exactly what we all thought Troy Franklin and Bo Nix would be in terms of the college teammates that have that synergy and that chemistry that we didn't really see play out for most of this season, with the exception of the first scoring drive against Buffalo. So that's an intriguing one to watch out for.
Yeah, and then to the running back position, we'll go back to Devin Neal. Going into this week now, and I know he tore up the Buffs, Jake. Jake's getting all upset because he tore up the Buffs.
No, I'm wondering, Cecil, I'm wondering why you would draft Ashton Genty at 20 if you can get Devin Neal in the 4th round.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah, now I've said Devin Neal in the 3rd, and people that I trust in this league that are executives are like, no, you can get him later. I kind of like to cover my base, cover something else too, but I like to cover my bases of just like, I'm going to take him in the 3rd round before anyone can scoop in on the 4th round, because you should have gotten Bucky Irvin last year. That's the duck you should have gotten. And you move up, you get Troy Franklin. The pick that you originally had before you moved up, Bucky Irvin was still drafted after that and over 1,500 all-purpose yards. He only played about 45% of the snaps for the Buccaneers. So Devin Neal's a guy. I don't mess around. He's a fourth rounder. I don't wait till day 3. I take him at the end of day 2, make him a third-round pick. Not only Alvin Kamara-like, but as Andrew Mason and I are watching practice yesterday, we go, you know what? There's a little bit of Clinton Portis to his game. And at 215 pounds, 220 pounds, whatever you think he weighs in at, I think you're going to like what you see if Devin Neal puts on a Denver Broncos uniform.
Yeah, I'm with you, Cecil. I mean, I saw him tear up Shiloh Sanders, so that didn't say all that much.
Yeah, everybody's doing that nowadays, it seems
you
like.
know,
yeah.
For my money, I've been fully on the board of you can get a really good running back, whether it's Scadaboo or Neal or the kid from Nebraska. All running backs I saw tear up the Buffs, who I think performed better against bigger teams than, Ashton Genty. And as much as I like Ashton Genty and I enjoyed watching him play in the Mountain West this season, I think there's a better value play for the Broncos, and especially if maybe one of those top tier tight ends is on the board still at 20, right, Cease?
Yeah, and that's where the Tyler Warren conversation comes into play. Now, I've heard people say like Harold Fannin should be a first-round pick. I personally don't see it. I'm thinking more second or third round. He's just too raw right now, even though the athletic tools are there for Fannin. I know Colston Loveland has been mocked to the Broncos, maybe even some people saying he could be a first-round pick. Don't necessarily agree with that. I see Tyler Warren and the rest of the group, which is a really strong group. So you have a conundrum here. And for me, it comes down to who can make the most instant impact, because the window is now. The window, this ain't Buffalo, baby. We ain't going to sit around for 5 years and be like, they could do it, guys, and then never do it. The window's right now.
Rookie clock is ticking.
Yes, yes. And it's that window that's ticking, that clock is going. Who can make the more instant impact? Is that Tyler Warren, who might take a few years to get going, as most tight ends do? Nobody's going to be Brock Bowers in this class. We all need to get past that. It's not going to – there's going to be a Bowers bump. I think Warren goes in the top 10, not at, 14, whatever the Colts are at, right? They're lurking around there, and Cowboys lurking at 12 for Ashton Genty. I think it's the most instant impact player. Who can that be for the Broncos? Because you need a running back, you need a tight end. These are great classes for both. It's an advantage for Denver. So now you have to pick, are you going to get the guy that takes a few years, or are you going to get the guy? And if it's Genty, I toss out Saquon Barkley comparisons, and scouts I know go, yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, guys. And look at what Barkley has done, carrying the Eagles there with a quarterback who only has, one pass from the pocket that's non-play action?
Don't even get me started on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah,
Cecil. Don't even do it. I'm in a
exactly.
Good mood.
Yeah, well, prepare to be in a bad mood if you don't get this running back thing solved. And I think the Broncos really need to emphasize that, because a runner can get more of an instant impact than a tight end who might be great in 3 years. You need great right now, because you can make a run right now. By the way, the buzz from people that I talked to in Kansas City is Kelsey's retiring, win or lose. So if Kelsey retires and they're kind of down-ish, I hate to say down for a team that just goes to Super Bowls nonstop, but if you have a window to win the AFC West, Chargers are going to charge her. If the Chiefs take a step back, if Travis Kelce retires, even if that step back is like 10 wins, can you take advantage? I think with the right running back, you can.
See, so one last one for me, and then I'll cede the microphone to Jake. The heart and soul of the Senior Bowl, from my perspective, as someone who's always watched it from afar, is that a lot of these names, not all, but a lot of these names are not going to be your flash sizzle names, but they are guys that can kind of be part of that hearth, kind of the meat and potatoes, the inner parts of a team that can keep you sustained at a high level versus just the immediate impact that fades. And I think that's an underrated element of roster construction, but one that I think that George Paton and the Broncos front office is pretty attuned to. And I think that that's where George Paton's made a lot of his money in the NFL, is being able to work the middle and late end rounds of the draft. And the players that you're watching this week that fall into that category, while they may not have the name and the immediate impact capability of like an Ashton Genty or, somebody that's going to go in the first round, the presence of the players in those middle rounds, in my opinion, should impact the direction you go with your first round pick. So based on your observations thus far, how would you, if you're sitting next to George Paton and Sean Payton in the war room, based on some of the observations you've seen thus far, how would you weigh the positional importance of where they should go early based on what they can still get late?
Yeah, and based on the class that we're seeing here, and I'll even include what I saw in Dallas at the Shrine Bowl, you can still get edge guys late, like edge guys on day 3, and you think, well,
Jonathan
wait a
Cooper.
second, you got a bunch of edges. And I was just going to say, I got Cooper vibes from Mike Green, the edge from Marshall, who practiced this morning. He's not out here right now, but he practiced. I mean, it was like how Cooper at this game, like Baron Browning was the star and the stud everybody knows about. Cooper was that under the radar, like he's just getting it done. You can't block this guy. Mike Green from Marshall, I get the same sort of vibes from him. So when that Cooper kind of alarm goes off, I'm like, uh-oh, I mean, am I falling in love? Did I fall in love with a Marshall, the Thundering Herd? And the answer with Mike Green may be yes. So I look at what I've seen so far and I go, I like some of those linebackers late. I like some of those edge players late. Now, the buzz is that they'll take care of inside linebacker via free agency, whether that's a Nick Bolton, which I talked to my Chiefs guys, and they're like, take him. He can't move anymore. He'd still be an upgrade over what the Broncos had at ILB last year. So we'll see. And again, I think in all of your needs, running back, you're going to take 2. Tight end, you're going to take 2. Inside linebacker, even if you get Nick Bolton or Willie Gay, right? You're still going to take 2. You're going to take another one. You'll take a free agent and take a draft pick. So I think it's doubling up on your weaknesses and getting as many darts as you can. That's a famous George Payton strategy.
From the Shrine and the Senior, what have you learned, and what's the latest buzz on Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter?
Yeah, and Travis Hunter, the Patriots really want him. Good luck getting him. Travis Hunter should be the number 1 pick. I mean, he is the generational talent that Tennessee's GM was talking about, but also with Tennessee. And I've dug on this and I've pushed back on guys and I'm trying to get like every possible angle. The interest in Shedeur is real. I can report that right now. Perhaps when I get to the combine, things will be a little bit different. But right now, the interest in Shedeur at number 1 is real. And Cam Ward isn't here, guys. I was excited last week. Like, I'm going to see Shedeur in Dallas. I'm going to see Cam Ward in Mobile. Cam Ward's not here. So where Shedeur did not participate in the practices, he was there talking to teams. He was there to get the interview process going. You saw him and Brian Dable dabbing it up at Dallas all the time. It's like a bro hug, a bromance starting. We know the Giants want him. They're at 3. Tennessee might be playing the game of like, we're just going to say we really want Shedeur, but I do believe they are heavily considering it, as they should. They need a franchise quarterback. They need a talented guy. That's Shedeur Sanders, standing head and shoulders, even without practicing. He has taken back that number 1 mantle from Cam Ward because, again, you say you're going to be here and then you're not here. Like, do what Shedeur did. Say you're going to be there, then show up and then interview and talk to people. With Cam Ward not being here, Shedeur regains almost the stronghold, if you will, on that number 1 overall pick status.
Well, regardless of what Shedeur does in the NFL, I can almost guarantee that his legacy in the NFL will not be tied to a greatest accomplishment being a mayonnaise endorsement, which puts him better than Will Levis in my book. Cecil, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're all over the place covering everything for us on the air and online at denversports.com. We'll check out all your hits on YouTube, on social media. You and Andrew Mason do a great job, and we thank you for joining us today.
Peace, fellas.
Later. Jake, I will say, I guess I could have said it to his face when he was just on camera with us, but I'll say it now, that to a casual fan or to somebody who's just more of an observer of the NFL, the East-West Shrine game, the Senior Bowl, those kinds of things, I think they kind of fly under the radar or they get overlooked. But I can say confidently, as someone who's been here in this market, working in sports for the last 7-8 years now, at least one of the names that Cecil brings up in terms of the observations he makes will, whether it's on the Broncos, which has happened in the past, or players that the Broncos have passed on, will be in that Bucky Irving category of like, son of a gun, we were sitting right there. How did we miss it? And Cecil and Mace are one of the guys on the forefront of those observations.
Yeah, I don't know if they ducked up or bucked up last year by not getting Bucky. But you know, Richie, Cecil, the first second I joined the fan, it was like right before the draft 2 years ago. And basically Cecil's like, I know the guy the Broncos need to draft late in the draft. I'm like, I don't care who they draft. I'm like, I just don't. Like, I don't. He's like, Isaiah Pacheco. Remember the name?
I remember.
I'm like, okay, dude, like, I don't know anything about this. Like, not really. Look what Isaiah Pacheco's meant for the Chiefs. I mean, I'm not saying he's Saquon Barkley or he's taken them to a completely different level, but heck, he's been better than anything we've had here in Denver the last couple of years. So one of these names that Cecil throws out there the next couple weeks is going to hit in a way where you're going to want them stashed on your bench in fantasy for the second half of their rookie year, and they're going to be someone you keep on your fantasy team going forward every single year. Because, those Cecil picks got me in the Dynasty Championship this year. I know what I'm doing, man.
I was just going to bring that up, that the Broncos and NFL teams benefit from the insight and the evaluation of guys like Cecil. But I personally have made a decent amount of money that I won't even disclose based on the recommendations of like 12th and 13th round draft picks that I'm drafting in my fantasy leagues. That the rest of my leagues are like, dude, what the hell are you doing? Who's Puka Nacua?
He told me on Puka. He's got another guy that's funny. This one's
Kyron Williams.
Kyron, who's on. There's another one right now, and he still hasn't even played, but he's on
Jonathan Brooks.
No. It's a running back on the Lions practice squad. I know who
you're talking about.
He went to Utah, and he was a linebacker at Utah, and he converted to running back. And I've had him sitting on my taxi squad on my dynasty team for a year, and everyone's like, "Who is this guy?" I'm just like, "Trust me, it's gonna work out."
I love it. Well, we love Cecil's contributions and the work that he does for us out on the road, man on the street, collecting insight and intel that you can only get when you put in the time and the effort to travel around to cover all these things the way that he does. Jake, thank you so much for joining me like you do almost every single Wednesday, and I will talk to you next week, my friend.
See you, buddy.
The rest of you out there, have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you tomorrow, same time, same place.